I'm Mike.
I'm Jason.
Welcome to Snake Envy. Our topic today is universal. This applies to everybody in the hobby, whether you're a breeder, a hobbyist, doesn't matter. These are things
Lizards, frogs, whatever.
Every animal, including dogs and cats for that matter. But today we're going to talk about cleaning and disinfecting. They're two different things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And you don't necessarily need to do both all the time. But we're going to walk you guys through kind of our spot cleaning versus our disinfecting processes and talk about the differences between the 500 plus snake collection you see here surrounding us and the 7 that I have at home. And what some of the concerns might be a little different based on those collections. So let's start with spot cleaning. What is spot cleaning?
Spot cleaning is when you go through your cages and just pick out the droppings, anything that looks yucky or funky.
Yeah.
So you just kind of that's if you're using a bedding. If you're using paper towels or newspaper, it might be a little different.
Actually, yes, that's actually a great point. Let's back up. There are multiple ways of dealing with cleanup in an enclosure and keeping animals on a variety of surfaces. So we hear about bioactive enclosures. There's a trend right now involving potting soil. Those two are similar in a way. They just go about it different ways. The idea is that you're going to have to physically remove less stuff. And you've either got good bacteria in potting soil or a cleanup crew of insects and good bacteria kind of doing the work for you so that you're physically having to go in and clean your enclosure less. It's sort of the idea is that it's sort of a self-contained little ecosystem. Now, me personally, I've always had doubts about that. In the wild, out in the woods, I have no doubt all that stuff's going on. To what degree you can do it in a small captive environment, I'm not going to lie. I'm a little skeptical, particularly with burrowing species. And you and I primarily keep burrowing species. So while all that stuff's breaking down, how often is your snake tunneling through its poop?
Its own feces, yeah.
Waiting for that whole thing to happen. So I have no problem saying right from the jump, I'm a little skeptical about those. I have a lot of questions. We both keep on substrate. We both use different types of substrate. I consider newspaper and paper towel to not be substrate, but it's another way of doing it where the people who do that often say that they think the cleanup is easier and more complete. I'm skeptical about that too. Where do you fall?
It might depend on the species you work with because a bull snake and newspaper, they have large droppings. And so that you might have to put a lot of layers down. But if you have a smaller snake or lizard, it might be, easy. You can just grab it and wad it up and throw it away. And newspaper, when it's printed, it's sterile.
Yeah.
Because it's the heat and whatever.
But not after.
I use paper towels on my Neos a lot of time.
Yeah.
Just because I'm worried about them at first eating, maybe swallowing a piece of aspen or something like that. So I keep them on paper towels for a while, sometimes a year, sometimes a few weeks. Just depends.
Yeah. And those are snakes that you're intending to sell. For the hobbyist, I saw somebody recently on a group who'd been told to keep their Neo on paper towels for a year, and a lot of us were kind of like, that's really overkill. But yeah, in the beginning, you also want to know for certain that they're pooping and that they're doing all those things.
Yeah, it's easier to track.
Yeah, sometimes substrate will hide that stuff away. But that's a great segue into the difference between cleaning and sanitizing, because even with newspaper and paper towels, it may be easy to clean, where you're constantly taking and replacing the substrate, if you will. But where's all that stuff going in terms of the nooks and crannies, and how much more often do you have to sanitize if you're doing that? I feel like spot cleaning is more thorough and complete if you're using substrate, physical substrate. That's just my view. But let's talk about them separately. Let's start with spot cleaning. So what is your routine beyond, what do you do beyond, picking up a poop, or and here's the other thing, it can involve things related to your prey. It can be mouse droppings. It can be anybody who feeds chicks. When you set a chick that's thawed on substrate, there's stuff left behind. I don't know if it's the oil from their feathers but there's always a spot.
Yeah.
So you have to be mindful of that stuff too. So you go in. What are you trying to accomplish with spot cleaning?
When I'll spot clean 2 to 3 times a week typically.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, I really want to protect my animals, protect my investment, protect my business. I even wear gloves. I wear vinyl gloves.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I will use these napkins. These are cheap. I think these are like $3 for 500 of these things, $3 or $4. And this is a cheaper brand. So I, even with gloves, I will use these even.
Yes.
And maybe it's probably overkill, but I just, like I said, I want to protect my animals, and take the best care of them as possible. So I kind of do that, and I get anything that's yucky, any droppings or urine, anything.
And my goal is to get even a little extra.
Yeah,
so if the poop takes up this much, I'm kind of grabbing this much.
Yeah.
And I also want to make sure I go all the way down to the bottom. Now, with a neo or some smaller species of snakes, the poop tends to sit on top. You don't really have to go digging down.
It's a lot less.
Bull snakes. Yeah. For any of you out there that have ever been wondering if what you've heard about bull snake poop is true, it's true. It's voluminous. It's stinky. And you'd swear they do it on purpose. They spray it all over the sides of the enclosure. They track it everywhere.
Yeah,
so
water dish.
It's much more involved to spot clean like a bull snake compared to a king snake, for example.
I have a friend that he would call pits. He would call them pinchalophus.
Yes. Everything you've heard is true. It's voluminous, and it can vary in consistency. And sometimes they'll even poop more than once in a week. They have poop habits that are unreal. So spot cleaning for them is obviously different. But I want to get a wider area, and then what I do is I use Simple Clean. I have gone online and I've read the hazardous materials sheet for this product, and basically what you find is none. Even under like eye irritant, it says none. Now I wouldn't want to spray this in my eye, but supposedly it's not even an eye irritant. So I like it because it's safe. So once I've kind of, let's say for a bull snake, I've gone a little wider. You almost always have to go to the bottom of the substrate. Yeah. And then I will use a paper towel instead of a napkin. But same principle. I'm going to wet my paper towel with this. Then I'm going to go in. I'm going to clean the underside of the enclosure, again, in a wider area than anything was. And then I'm going to replace back with clean substrate. This stuff also works great in my experience for the poop on the sides of the enclosure and wherever else they've got it. Now, I try to spray this and then go in, but if I have a corner of the enclosure where a bull snake has really gone to town, I can clear all that substrate away. And I actually feel good about spraying this. I feel like it's safe enough. I can spray it into the corner of the enclosure, even if the snake's at the other end. And then I can wipe it all down. And then I'm going to put in fresh substrate. So the pro of this, very safe. I don't have to worry about whether there was any residue left behind, but it's strong enough to cut through poops and actually do a good thorough cleaning. The con, there's going to be some people who would say this isn't strong enough. But that's where the difference between cleaning and disinfecting comes in. It's no different than when we wash our hands. When you wash your hands with soap, unless it's antibacterial soap, you're not disinfecting, you're not killing germs. You're just using the soap to take up the germs and then rinse them off. This is similar. I'm removing anything that if it were left behind, bacteria would start growing. So I'm making sure that I'm removing it all. I save disinfecting for later. When you're spot cleaning, do you do any disinfecting on top, or is it strictly about spot cleaning?
It's mostly just spot cleaning. Okay. If it gets really bad, and they do get bad, you might just want to just do an overhaul. But
yes,
and this is the time of year where I do an overhaul. But
and then in addition to napkins or paper towels, you're using Scotch-Brite. That's a great idea as well.
Yeah, I started using these like a year ago. They're cheap, but you got this soft, spongy side, and then if you get that stubborn, hardened urine stains, it will scratch your tubs a little bit, but it's not been bad enough to notice.
Yeah.
So, I like it.
Heavy duty stuff, you got that you can go to. I find between this and a paper towel, 99% of the time, I'm good. I may need to let this soak just a couple of seconds, and it'll break it down. Let's talk about disinfecting or sanitizing and how that's different. So what are you using in terms of sanitizing, disinfecting?
I started using ammonia a couple years ago. I was using bleach for a long time. You hear a lot of bad diseases and stuff, and so this will kill everything. Ammonia kills crypto, or bleach doesn't even kill crypto. And not that, I just wanted to be, protective and take care of my animals the best way. So maybe I don't know, it might be overkill, but
to what degree are you diluting this, or are you using it straight?
No, I dilute it.
It's like a cup per gallon.
Yeah,
something like that. Gallon of water to a cup of this.
And then I'll just use a little dish soap to get some lather in there.
Now we talked
about. I pre-soak. I soak sometimes an hour.
Yeah. Ammonia and bleach, by the way, they're pretty much contact disinfectants. They don't really have to soak. The one I use, we're gonna talk about, it's a little different. It does take some time, and that's one of the downsides of it. But these are pretty instantaneous, even when they're diluted. We talked about substrate, but let's talk about decor, water bowls, real quick before we forget. Tell us about your system, because sometimes I'm jealous of your water bowls because when a snake poops in it, you just toss it.
Yeah, and that has not been the case. I just started doing that a couple of years ago, and it's mostly, I sat there and thought scrubbing water bowls, and it takes hours.
Yeah,
I'll fill up a big giant tote of water bowls, and then they're disgusting when they poop in them.
Yes.
And
you're using deli cups.
I'm just using straight up cheap deli cups.
Yes, for water. Now the downside, those are going to get tipped over sometimes. They're not super heavy. But on the plus side, somebody takes a poop in or near it, you just toss it.
Speaking of water bowls, a friend showed me these little 4-inch pipe connectors.
So this is like
PVC.
A PVC coupler.
Yeah, and then you just drop a deli cup in. Bull snakes do not knock these over.
Really?
Very rarely.
So between the weight of the water and the PVC, no tipping.
That's great. It's a cheap, easy way to do it. I use them.
Do you know offhand
not always
what this is costing you?
I don't.
I know you're buying them in bulk, but anyway, cheap enough that you're not worried about tossing them.
Right, because time is money, and I'm spending so much time cleaning water bowls and
Yes.
stuff. It like it was time is money to me. So like if I'll just buy them because the time
Yeah.
that it takes me to clean water bowls every week, it's a big chore, and
Yeah.
I don't have the time.
Now, tell everybody about your hides. This is also genius.
Just cardboard boxes. I'll use cereal boxes, Coke boxes, anything,
Yeah.
any paper towel rolls.
Yeah.
A lot of people know that I do that, and
Yeah. And you've probably seen it in some of the filming we've done.
yeah, I get teased about it sometimes, but
but
you know, like
but it's
if
sanitary.
a snake drops a bomb in there, you just toss
You
it.
toss
It
it.
didn't cost
Yep.
you anything.
Put in a new one.
I have a whole giant box at my house.
Yeah.
It's 4x4 and 4 feet tall, and it's busting at the seams of cardboard.
Everywhere you go, you collect them. For me, as a hobbyist, where I only have 7 enclosures, they're all display enclosures, so I'm a little more particular about what everything
Yeah.
looks like. But I'm a huge fan of fake decor, I guess is the best way to describe it. The plastic stuff that's made today. So my hides, my water bowls, they're made of that hard plastic. Natural decor is great, but you're going to constantly be turning it over because they're porous, like wood is porous. I use things like antler sheds. I do use some natural things. I've got some rocks, but at some point those get pooped on. They're porous, they're absorbing, they provide a little medium for bacteria to grow. So you can only clean them so well when they're natural. At some point, you're going to have to turn them all over. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of fake decor. It looks great these days. A lot of it at a glance looks very, very natural. But you could even throw those things in the dishwasher on a sanitized cycle and know that you've killed everything. I use dish soap. So if a snake poops in a water bowl, I'm going to use dish soap. I have a brush that I keep in the bathtub, and that brush, that dish brush, I'm going to use soap first. I'm going to rinse it. I'm going to flush whatever needs to be flushed. Then I'm going to rinse it. I'm going to soap it. I'm going to rinse it. Then I come back to my sanitizer. So let's talk a little bit about disinfecting. Is ammonia all you're doing?
No, that's not all I'm doing. I actually, after I wash with these two and soak and everything, I will steam. I will use steam just as a precautionary thing. It's time consuming, but I think the animals are worth it.
Particularly when it's your livelihood. It may be duplicating this to some degree.
It's overkill,
but nothing wrong with that.
I'm okay overkilling.
Yes, I agree.
Hi guys, I just want to show you kind of a little bit of how I do some cleaning around here. I pre-soak everything with ammonia and Dawn dish soap or any type of dish soap. I wash and rinse them real well, let them air dry. This has all been washed, and I sterilize everything nowadays, and just to be precautious. And I just wanted to run you through how I sterilize. I use steam. I got this steamer here. I bought this on Amazon, but I also have seen them at Home Depot. They're about $140. Anyways, it's a higher powered steamer. And you get the idea.
Now, what do you consider to be the pros and cons of using steam over other methods of sanitizing?
Temperatures, high temperatures will kill everything, crypto, anything. And so it's probably overkill, but I want to protect my investment. I want to protect my animals and my business. So that's why I kind of go the extra step to make sure everything's perfect.
What's the downside?
Time. This takes a lot of time, as this is days of work, long days of work. So I use this is more than normal. It's just backed up on me. So, but yeah, it's a great way to sterilize. You really, if you were to use steam, you don't even need to use soap because it will kill everything. But I just do.
But soap is going to get rid of poop. Or,
yeah, it's a little cleaner. Yeah, you don't want to be steaming.
Yeah,
you don't want to be steaming crap and all that. So.
And if you're a hobbyist and you just have a few snakes, you're not going to have to spend the time you're spending, and that $140 investment will probably pay off elsewhere in your house.
Oh yeah,
as well.
Your car or whatever.
Yeah, so probably a good investment.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. My system's a little bit different. Now, I use chlorhexidine. Commonly, it's referred to as Hex. This is a veterinary disinfectant, and it is also, it does have some human applications from what I understand, like in a dermatological setting. I think they use it on some skin conditions and things like that. Now, a little bit of a trade-off. This is your investment. This room we're sitting in, this is your livelihood. For me, yes, I care deeply about my animals. Yes, I've invested in my animals, but I also don't have quite the same level of concern, and I'm not turning over animals to the degree you are, that I have quite the same risk.
It's so easy to a smaller collection.
Yeah, 50. So I err a little more on the side of safe for the animal than I do making sure I'm absolutely nuking everything possible. And that's the trade-off. This plus steam. But if you had any of this residue left behind, there's a little bit of risk. But that's where the steam comes in, because you're definitely going to get rid of all this.
It does.
Bleach.
With moisture.
I quit using bleach years ago for the same reason, because bleach is caustic and bleach is toxic.
And I have seen bad things from bleach.
Yes, I have as well. And the crazy thing about bleach is you can have a little bit of residue that dries, but if it were to get re-wet by a knocked over water bowl or something like that, you could have your snakes going through diluted bleach. So bleach, in my view, is too risky. So Hex, I'm eliminating the risk to my animals. This is a safe disinfectant, even for water bowls. So if I have a water bowl get pooped in, it's dish soap, rinse. I might have to do that a couple times. I give it the smell test, make sure that the dish soap has done its job. Then I spray the water bowl down with a diluted Hex solution. This bottle is small because you're only going to put a couple or a few capfuls of this into a gallon of water. So that's why this bottle is so small. That way I mix a gallon ahead of time, and then I'm filling my spray bottles from that gallon that's already mixed.
Nice.
But I can spray this directly into a water bowl. Now, the downside to this compared to bleach or ammonia is these kill pretty much on contact. This you have to let sit. And the recommendation, always read the bottle when you get it, because dilutions are different. I don't want to give everybody hard and fast and then find out your dilution's a little different. So read the labels. But you need to let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes. So I've got a routine down that, the decor goes in, it's being cleaned, I clean it, and then I spray everything down with Hex, and it's sitting while I go back to the enclosure, get the substrate out, clean the inside of the enclosure, then I go back. Now I can rinse out everything that was being hexed. Then I take that stuff back. I've sprayed the enclosure down with Hex while I was going to get that stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I've got a routine down where the 10 to 15 minute soak is built in. And then at the end of that process, you got to make sure everything's dry, and then new substrate, fresh substrate goes in. So that's my total enclosure breakdown, disinfecting. Do you do your disinfecting on a schedule, or do you kind of play it by ear based on what's going on?
I mean, I have a rough schedule, but it's generally when it needs it.
Yeah.
Really bad, and this time of year, they've been awake for 4 months, and it's showing. And
Yes.
so I'm doing a deep clean,
fully.
do a deep clean in July usually.
Yeah.
And do a lot of spot cleaning in between. I also do a really thorough deep clean a week before hibernation, and that way when my snakes go in hibernation, brumation, whatever you want to call it, they're spick and span cages, and they're cleaned out. I let them clean themselves out. Of course, there's always some stragglers and stuff, but for the most part, it's super clean. And the whole time they're hibernating for 4 to 5 months, these cages are really clean.
Yeah, exactly. And you get a few poops during brumation,
You do.
but for the most part, snakes are not pooping during brumation. They're not eating, so you're not introducing prey bacteria into your enclosure. I'm similar. I used to do it on really kind of a set schedule, but over time, as I've found better substrates and as I've also kind of improved my spot cleaning routine, and I've been more careful about how much excess I do on the spot cleaning, I feel like I have to do the sanitizing less often. There's also the smell test. You open an enclosure, and even though you spot cleaned a couple days prior, there's a smell.
Yeah.
For me, no ifs, ands, or buts. That weekend, that one's getting torn down. I am not suggesting that you wait for that funk. Hopefully you're catching them before the funk. But if that funk has set in, you absolutely, without a doubt, need to break that enclosure down and get everything out of there. The funk is probably in your substrate somewhere, even if it looks clean, or it's hidden under the substrate somewhere. So yeah, I'm the same way. It's more of an as needed, and it varies a little bit by species. Obviously, the smaller snakes can go a little longer than the bull snakes. My green tree python's enclosure can go a little longer than the terrestrial snakes. He poops less often.
Okay.
And when he does poop, he's a boreal, so it all tends to kind of be in one spot. And
you put some type of bedding down underneath him.
I do put substrate under him. A lot of people use newspaper paper towels on boreal snakes. I don't. I have actually caught him rooting around in his substrate. So,
really?
Yeah. So I do substrate. My substrate is also really absorbent. Green trees, for whatever reason, tons of liquid. Not all of their urine is solid.
Okay.
And so their poops are very watery. And so that substrate really absorbs it. I still have to go out around it. But I might even change out like half of his substrate and leave the other half because nothing's been over there. He eats primarily on one half. He primarily poops on one half. So that substrate over here I don't have to worry about quite as much. What about your snakes? Do you ever bathe or wash your snakes?
Not very often. If I have some sheds or eye cap or whatever, I will soak them. I feel like, they're definitely gonna crawl through their feces at some point, and I'm not here all the time, and it just happens, and the thought of that on their bodies is kind of gross, but they shed their skins.
Yes.
And that is basically clean again.
Yes, exactly. I do it as needed.
Yeah, me too, kind of. But
I handle my snakes more regularly than you do, obviously, just because of the numbers. But if I pick up a snake, and sometimes I'll even give them a sniff, and if I'm picking up something foul, I'll shower them. But one tip I would maybe just throw out there is that if you do a complete enclosure breakdown, you've got everything clean, you've got everything sanitized, you've got brand new substrate. If you put a dirty snake back in there, to a degree, you've kind of undone what you just did. Now, again, 500 snakes, you don't have a shower here. I'm not suggesting you're doing something wrong. It's impossible.
I admire you guys with smaller collections.
But I do know some people that use like baby wipes. Oh, yeah. And when they do their teardowns, they just give them at least a wipe down.
I'll give them a wipe down if they're looking really ratty.
Yeah. What I do is I shower them. I'll just turn on the shower, lukewarm, nothing too warm. I give them a little dunk. They actually seem to enjoy it. And I'll use either dog shampoo or baby shampoo, something that's gentle. And I just lather them up, and then I dunk them again, and then give them a quick dry, and they're good. It works really, really well. But just food for thought, if you do all that, you do all your sanitizing, but if the snake just ran through his feces 3 days prior, that's still on him, and you're kind of undoing to a degree what you just did. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can use baby wipes, something that's really gentle. You can give them a quick shower.
And keeping your snake really clean it's a great. I mean, that's what you should be doing.
Yeah. Just be careful with what you use. Use something that's pretty gentle, that you're going to have less likelihood of some kind of reaction. But
and then saying, keeping your snakes clean and all that, there is a factor where, like, the kid that lived in a bubble, and he's never exposed to any bacteria or anything like that. Kind of the same thing, Yes. I feel like with reptiles too, they need to have some exposure to build up their immunity.
Yes, that's a great point for us to end on. Is sterility is impossible, and it's really not the goal. The goal is to keep things clean, but yes, there is that fine line between even if you could maintain a sterile environment, it's probably not good for their immunity any more than it's good for our kids to live in bubbles. So that's actually a great point to end on. But hopefully we've given you some options to think about, and whether you have a big collection or a small collection, as with everything else in this hobby, there's more than one way to do everything. You and I are doing things different, but they're both effective. And you have risks that you have to be really concerned about that are a lesser concern for me. And that affects some of the decisions we make. And I think that's the point that we want to get across. Thank you.
Thank you.